The champagne flute shattered against the cobblestone path, its crystal shards glinting like tears under the string lights. I froze, my breath catching as the sound sliced through the laughter and jazz spilling from the venue behind me. My fiancé Daniel stood a few paces away, his face pale, eyes wide with something worse than anger, disgust. My lips still burned from the kiss I'd just shared with my ex, Ryan. In the shadowed alley behind the ivy-draped wall, the taste of bourbon and regret lingered, bitter as the truth now clawing its way into the open. "You kissed him," Daniel said, his voice low, trembling with restraint. "At our engagement party." His words weren't a question, but a blade, sharp and precise, cutting through the haze of my denial. I wanted to scream that it wasn't what it looked like, that it was a mistake, a fleeting lapse, but the lie wouldn't form. My heart pounded, each beat a hammer against my ribs, as I stood there, caught in the wreckage of my own making. Hours earlier, the evening had shimmered with promise. The venue, a historic manor nestled in a grove of ancient oaks, glowed under a canopy of stars. Fairy lights twinkled, casting golden halos on the faces of our guests. Friends, family, colleagues, all gathered to celebrate our love. Daniel's hand had rested warm and steady on my lower back as we mingled, his smile radiant, his touch a quiet vow. I'd worn a cream silk dress that clung to my skin, its fabric cool against the summer heat, and every glance from him felt like a promise of forever. But beneath my polished exterior, a restless unease stirred, a whisper I couldn't quite silence. Ryan's arrival had been the first crack in the evening's perfection. I hadn't invited him, God no, but there he was leaning against the bar, his dark hair tousled, his smirk as familiar as a half-forgotten song. He'd been my first love, the one who'd burned bright and fast before crashing into chaos 2 years ago. Seeing him now, in a tailored blazer that hugged his broad shoulders, stirred something dangerous, a mix of nostalgia and warning. I told myself it was nothing, just a ghost from the past, but my pulse quickened when his eyes met mine across the crowded room. "You look happy," Ryan said later, when we found ourselves alone near the dessert table, the air thick with the scent of lavender and vanilla. His voice was smooth, teasing, but his gaze held something heavier, something unresolved. I laughed, brushing it off, but my fingers tightened around my glass. "I am," I replied too quickly, my voice brittle. Daniel was across the lawn, laughing with his sister, oblivious to the way Ryan's presence tugged at the frayed edges of my composure. The night wore on and I couldn't shake him. Ryan was everywhere, lurking in my peripheral vision, his laughter cutting through the music, his casual touches as he passed me a drink or brushed against my arm. Each moment felt like a dare, a pull towards something I'd sworn to leave behind. I told myself I was in control, that I loved Daniel, that Ryan was just a shadow. But shadows have weight, and his was pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe. "Let's get some air," Ryan suggested, his voice low, as we stood near the open French doors. The party was at its peak, a swirl of clinking glasses and warm chatter, but I felt suffocated, trapped between the life I'd chosen and the one I'd left. I glanced at Daniel, still engrossed in conversation, his profile softened by the glow of the chandeliers. "Just for a minute," I said, ignoring the warning bells in my head. The alley behind the venue was a world apart, cloaked in darkness, the air cool and damp with the scent of moss and earth. The distant hum of the party faded, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the faint drip of a leaking pipe. Ryan leaned against the brick wall, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "You don't look like yourself tonight, Claire," he said, stepping closer. His voice was a hook, pulling at memories I'd buried. Late nights, reckless passion, the thrill of being known in a way Daniel never could. "I'm fine," I lied, my throat tight. But I wasn't. I was unraveling, caught in the pull of his familiarity, the danger of his nearness. When he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. When he leaned in, his breath warm against my cheek, I didn't stop him. The kiss was a spark in a dry forest, igniting everything I'd tried to suppress. It was desperate, hungry, a collision of guilt and longing that left me dizzy. For a moment, I was 19 again, fearless and reckless, before the weight of choices had settled on my shoulders. Then the world snapped back. A gasp, sharp, unmistakable, cut through the haze. I pulled away, my heart lurching as I saw Daniel standing at the mouth of the alley, his silhouette rigid against the warm glow of the venue. The champagne flute he'd been holding lay in pieces at his feet, the sound of its shattering still echoing in my ears. Ryan stepped back, his expression unreadable, but I couldn't look at him. All I could see was Daniel, his eyes a storm of betrayal and pain. "Claire," Daniel said, his voice breaking on my name. "How could you?" He didn't shout, didn't rage. His quiet devastation was worse, a knife twisting in my chest. I opened my mouth, but no words came. What could I say? That it was a mistake? That I didn't mean it? The truth was messier, uglier. I loved Daniel, but Ryan's pull was a tide I hadn't fully escaped. And now the life I'd built was crumbling. "I'm done," Daniel said, his voice hollow. He turned, his footsteps heavy on the cobblestones, and disappeared into the light of the party. I stood frozen, my breath shallow, the weight of his words sinking into my bones. Ryan reached for me, but I shoved him away, my hands trembling. "Don't," I snapped, my voice raw. This was a mistake. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince. The rest of the night blurred into fragments. I slipped back into the party, my smile a mask, my heart a bruise. Guests laughed, oblivious to the fracture in my world. Daniel was there, but distant, his eyes avoiding mine. I wanted to run to him, to beg, to explain, but the space between us felt like a chasm. Every glance, every forced laugh, was a reminder of what I'd done. The air was thick with the scent of roses and champagne, but all I could taste was ash. Later, in the quiet of our apartment, the truth unraveled further. Daniel sat on the couch, his hands clasped tightly, his knuckles white. "Was it just tonight?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to lie, to say yes, but the weight of his gaze demanded honesty. "I don't know," I admitted, tears burning my eyes. "I thought I was over him. I thought I could handle seeing him again." The confession felt like peeling back my skin, exposing the raw, messy truth beneath. Daniel's silence was worse than any accusation. He stood, his movements slow, deliberate, and walked to the window. The city lights blurred through the glass, a kaleidoscope of cold blues and golds. "I trusted you," he said finally, his voice thick with unshed tears. "I built my whole future around you." Each word was a stone, heavy and unyielding, piling onto the guilt already crushing me. I wanted to beg for forgiveness, to promise I'd fix it, but the words felt hollow. How do you mend a trust you've shattered? How do you erase a moment that's burned into someone's soul? "I love you," I whispered, but it sounded weak, like a plea I didn't deserve to make. He turned, his eyes meeting mine for the first time since the alley. "I don't know if that's enough anymore," he said. The words hung in the air, final and devastating, like the closing of a door I hadn't realized was locked. He walked past me, his shoulder brushing mine, and the faint scent of his cologne, cedar and warmth, felt like a memory already slipping away. As the door clicked shut behind him, I sank to the floor, the hardwood cold against my palms. The engagement ring on my finger glinted in the dim light, a cruel reminder of the life I'd gambled and lost. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared, sharp and fleeting, like the last note of a song I'd never hear again.